Hi everyone, I hope you are well and enjoying our conference. I would like to introduce and announce our next speaker is Süleyman, game engineer from SYBO. Hi there. And he will speak about the casual and hyper casual. Um, Süleyman, stage is yours. Just let me know if you will need anything else.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hello, people. I'm a game engineer at SYBO. I'm Emre, and today I will be talking about the differences between the hyper-casual and the casual genres. And on the last part, we will also talk about the SYBO way of doing things. Okay, we shall begin. Okay, here are the list of the topics we will be talking about. We will talk about the classic approach of the hyper-casual games. We will talk about the smart approach, and we will talk about the hybrid approach. Then we will switch to the casual games, and we will also talk about the SYBO way in the end. The talk is not going to be that long. I won't bore you to that. I will keep it brief, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's start. The classic approach, the most common approach that you can see in almost every studio. This approach has been around since the beginning of the hyper-casual boom. The classic approach includes very short development cycles, monetization via ads, very short lifespan of the product, and very fast and rapid prototyping environments. In this approach, the development cycles are so short that it's sometimes under a week. It's hardly sometimes 2 weeks. And we should also mention that in this genre and in this approach, we try to push as many games in as many genres to the market to be successful and to be alive in the market, basically, since the products are very, very short-lived. The development cycle. First, we have an idea, and this idea has to be dopamine-rich, engaging, fun, satisfying, something that can stick around and stick to the player's head in a good amount of time. We have an idea, cool. And this idea, like I said, it's a satisfying one, such as cleaning a rug or cleaning a window or carving a wood, as we see in the market. We conceptualize this on this idea, and we create a game mechanic. We create a simple, fun, and single mechanic. So the game is easy to pick up and play, and easy to understand. This is important. We want our game to be prototyped as fast as possible. So we have these filters on the conceptualization part. Cool, we have conceptualized our game. What's next? We create a design document. We put our ideas or idea into the design document. Then we prototype on it. We prototype the game, like I said in the previous slide. We create this prototype in a very short amount of time, maybe sometimes under a week or even in days. But like I said, it's hardly 2 weeks. Cool, we create the prototype. Now what? We test the game. We get the tech KPI. We have the CPI. We have the retention. We have everything we need in the data-wise. So the tech KPI is very important here. We shouldn't be really targeting a specific device range. Instead, we should be targeting in a very broad range of devices to be profitable and to be successful, because we are relying on ad revenue, and we know that our game has a very short time span. Thus, we don't really have that lifetime value for our game. Okay, we did that, and the data is bad. What do? We have two options. If it's iteratable, we do the iteration, we test again, but we don't really have that much time. And then what? We kill the game because we don't have time. The market is really competitive, and we have to respond fast. Like I said, we have to push as much as games in a very short time as we can. If it doesn't work, we kill it. If it works, we continue. Okay, we tested it. The data is cool. We have a good retention. We have low CPIs, and we have a good KPI. Then what do? We soft launch it. Then we iterate on it. This iteration part is mostly about polishing the game, fixing some bugs, and just making some quality of life improvements. Then we release it. And then after the release, we don't do much support to it. I mean, we fix a couple of bugs. Maybe we add a feature or two, but we kind of forget about it after a while. Maybe we add some levels or some little content, but not that much, because we have to work on our next game. Yeah. Now, we have the smart approach. I call this a smart approach because I think it's really smart to do. In this approach, we don't have an actual game or an actual gameplay. Then how we do things? We test first and build later, aka fake it until you make it. We create marketing videos, advertisements, for a game that is non-existent, basically. We create those ads, we create those marketing videos. We then push those videos to platforms, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you are using, whatever you call it. You push it, and you get the interaction. After you get the interaction data, then you start building the actual game. And we will talk about that on the next slide. So, development cycle here is much more interesting. I like it more than the classic approach. That is why I call it the smart approach. And the smart approach can save you a lot of time and a lot of money for the development costs. Like I said, it's smart. It saves you from trouble. Okay, in this approach of the dev cycle, we start with an idea again. Like in the classic approach, we have a dopamine-rich, satisfying, fun idea that can stick with the players. But we conceptualize this idea in multiple ways. What does that mean? We create multiple marketing videos with more than one mechanics. So let's say we have an idea of a game, but we don't have a concept for a game mechanic. We create concepts of game mechanics inside the fake marketing videos. Those marketing videos are not based on a real game, but they are based on concepts of games. So we don't have a real game here. We push those marketing videos, we gather the data, and we compare between them. We take the best one out of them. Then we start having the prototype. We start creating the prototype of that conceptualized idea. Then we test on it. The testing phase is somewhat similar to the classic approach here. Again, the take KPI is really important. Again, retention and the CPI is important. But In this phase, you already know that CPI is going to be low because you already tested CPI actually with those marketing videos. So you know you are doing something right here. So you are less likely to kill this game. You are more likely to soft launch this game. Then you do what you do. You soft launch it. Then you iterate on it. You polish it. You add one or two content. You fix your bugs. Then you release it. And like in the classical approach, you forget about this kind of. You don't really add a lot more content. You don't really add more features because you don't want that anyways. You want to work on the next game that has already been conceptualized. You don't have time to support this game. The hybrid approach. Okay, so some of you might disagree because you might say this is not an approach but a genre, and I agree with you. This is a genre, but in the core, in the underlying part, this is an hyper-casual game with some more sophisticated features and a deeper gameplay. So this is just hyper-casual on steroids. Obviously, it has longer dev cycles, sometimes more than a month, because in this genre, you have more mechanics, more than one mechanic, which is very important. You have deeper gameplay, and you have actual persistent progression here. I mean, some of the hyper-casual games have persistent progression, yes, but they are not that deep. They're very, very shallow, and it's just like maybe a currency mechanic or something. But in this part, I'm talking about sometimes building cities or upgrading your character, buying items from the market, and whatever. You name it. You can do a lot of meta things. In this approach, you also somewhat rely on the in-app purchases. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about fully relying on the in-app purchases. You have the ad revenue in the priority, obviously, as it's in the classic and the smart approach, but you also have some in-app purchase elements here, like again, upgrading your character, maybe building a city, upgrading your buildings, upgrading your items, buying items, whatever. You just have more content to an hyper casual game, and then you have the hybrid now. The development cycle, you can do it in two ways actually. This also has a smart way and the classic way. You can go with both. But the key difference here is not the prototyping or testing. You can do them as same as the hyper casual, classic hyper casual smart ways. But the important part here is the conceptualization part. That is the key difference here. In the conceptualization part, you don't have an idea, but you have multiple ideas here. You have a satisfying, fun, dopamine-rich core mechanic, yes, but you also have some other supporting side mechanics. For example, let's say your core mechanic is digging into caves or maybe collecting rocks, and now you also have a side mechanic where you use those rocks to build your city or doing something else, you name it. Beyond that, beyond the side mechanics, you also have some meta mechanics. Let's go with the example here. This meta mechanics includes upgrading your, your excavator, upgrading your city, exploring more into cave, exploring something else, or just some meta mechanics that can support the game and making it live longer, basically. Okay, you have those, you have the ideas. Now you conceptualize it. You can, after the conceptualization part, after the conceptualization part, now you have two options again, actually. You can either do the smart way or the classic way. In the smart way, you push your marketing videos instead of real games, or you can just build your prototype and do the testing. After the testing, you can either kill your game, which is not really wise here because you invested more time than a normal hyper casual. You should be checking more if you can iterate on it, because you might have a good thing in your hands, but a bad execution. So you can fix the execution maybe by iterating on it, and you have to obviously invest more time, but it might work it. So don't just throw your game away if you are doing hybrid casual, because you have already invested a lot of time in it. And then rest is standard. You soft launch it, you polish it, you fix your bugs, you make it better, then you release it. Now the casual games, which is way, way more complex. In casual games, it is very much different than the hyper casual, as you know. In this genre, we have LTVs, lifetime values of the game, which very important, because we rely most of the time on in-app purchases instead of the ad revenues. In hyper casual, we have relied on the ad revenues, but in this case, we don't do that. We rely on the in-app purchases because our game is not designed to have heavy ad revenues. Okay, we have longer dev cycles, obviously, because we have lots more features, lots more content, and we have lots more to test here. We don't just test the core mechanic here. We test lots of mechanics. We test lots of features. We test lots of content. The releasing part of the casual games are also very different, because if you remember, I said a lot of times that you forget about it after you're releasing it in hyper casual games, but you don't do that in the casual games. After you release it, you have to do a lot of like supporting for it. You have to fix your bugs. You have to add more content every week, every month, whatever is your time schedule. You have to add more features to keep your game alive, because you only have one game that you have invested a lot of time, more than a year, that is there and has to be kept alive. For example, for SYBO, here is the Subway Surfers, just reached last year to 10 years, and still has millions of players, and we still create content for the game all the time, non-stop. This is what's the key difference between the casual and the hyper casual games. Their lifespan. The casual games lifespan is much more than a normal hyper casual game. It's designed to live longer, years, and thus the technical side and the development side of the things are way different, because when you're making a prototype for a hyper casual game, you don't really care about the code base. As an engineer, you just write your code. You don't really care about it, and you just release it like that, because you don't have the responsibility to maintain it, neither maintain it or use it in the future. I mean, you can create code libraries, helpers, whatever you're doing in common on these games, but you don't really care after you release your game, because you know that you won't be adding more content or future to it. But in casual games, you really care about the code base, because you know that you have to support that game for years, and you have to maintain that code base. You have to reuse that code base. You have to build everything on that code base. Thus, the code you're writing is really important here, and this also affects the development cycle. So, the development cycle here. This is way more different than a hyper-casual game, from the conceptualization to the release, as I said. On the conceptualization part, you have probably more than one idea again here. You have one core mechanic, obviously, as in every game. You will have multiple different side mechanics, supporting mechanics, and meta features, maybe social features, PvP, PvE, whatever feature you are building. There can be a lot of meta features here. And in the prototyping part, you don't do really the prototype in a week, but you do the prototype in a matter of time with iterations. So what this means that you won't have a design document probably. You will just have I don't know, sprints or a board that can build your game to an MVP state. Then from that MVP state, you just keep iterating on your game. And once you are ready to test your game, you push your game to the market, and you gather some small amount of users. Then you test the game on that users. Then you keep iterating on it. You don't stop iterating. You never stop iterating. You keep iterating until it is fully ready, it is fully polished, and until it is the state that you want it to be. Then you soft launch it, obviously. But does it end here? No. The iteration here never ends, guys. It keeps going and going. You keep iterating. Then you release your game, and you keep iterating. Because, like I said, you have to do years of support to your game. You have to keep it alive. You have to keep adding content. You have to keep your players in your game. You have to keep them for months. You have to keep them for weeks. You have to keep them playing your game. You care about lifetime value. You care about the in-app purchases. You have to make your players care about your game so that they can purchase stuff in your game so you can profit. And the SYBO way. The SYBO way is somewhat different than the casual games genre. I mean, at SYBO we do casual games, but in a little bit differently. At SYBO we have a very, very strong art department, and we encourage creativity. So our project ideas mostly come from our creatives. And this idea is guided by the market studies. So we just don't blindly pick ideas and prototype them. We have a good market study and we filter them out. It saves a lot of trouble. We also have a balance between the in-app purchases and the ad revenue. We just don't throw ads everywhere, but we don't also heavily rely on the in-app purchase either. We just strike a balance between them. We have a lot longer development cycles, and we even have longer lifespans of our games. Like I just said, the Subway Surfers has just reached 10 years of lifespan, which is insane. And we keep adding more content, which is more insane. And millions of players are still playing it. This is what you aim for a casual game. This is what you do if you are making a casual game, basically. This is like the key difference, the core difference between a hyper casual and a casual game, the lifespan of the game. We also have a very careful KPI metric gathering phase. We have multiple phases, but this is very sophisticated. It also helps our iterations. So like I said, we have longer development cycles, more than a year sometimes. We also leverage our own IP to cross-promote. As you know, we have the Subway Surfers IP, and we have Subway Surfers Match, and we have the Subway Surfers tag, and we will have more of them. And thank you for listening. Like I said, it was a short one. I hope I didn't bore you to death, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Thanks for coming and listening. I can now get some questions if you have any.
Yes, thank you so much for your interesting lecture. I guess we have few questions from the audience. The first question is from Sergey from Odzi Games. Is classic approach still popular in your opinion, or everything goes to complication? Sorry.
Sorry, what? I couldn't get the last part.
I will repeat. Yeah, I will repeat. Sorry. Is classic approach still popular in your opinion, or everything goes to complication?
That's a very good question. Because the classic approach was very popular for the last 3 years, but I'm seeing a lot of smart approaches here and there, and very different approaches. So I think it is still valid, but I don't think it has the same popularity as before.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from team lead Ahmad from Fins Games. From all these approaches, which approach has much higher failure rate? Is it better to invest in hyper casual games rather than casual games?
The failure rate is, I think the most failure rate would be on the classic approach, because you just build your games kind of blindly and test after prototyping it. So I would expect it to fail more commonly than a smart approach or a casual game, because you in also casual games you have the chance for the iterations. And I would probably invest in a casual game than hyper casual games, because I think it has more chance to stick out.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Salva, senior game developer at Game Factor. Hardly 2 weeks for a prototype. With how many devs need for this?
That's depend on the product. But most commonly in hyper casual games, you have a limited time to prototype, less than a week. By saying hardly 2 weeks, because there are some more complicated games, even between the hyper casual games, that can take 2 weeks of prototyping. And mostly this prototyping phase done by a single developer, or say single small group in a studio, like a developer, an artist, and a designer, like 3 or 4 people. But I didn't see any more than that. Sometimes it's 2 developers, but that is most commonly done in the phase where you do the soft launch or the polishing.
Okay, thanks a lot for your absolutely fantastic lecture. I hope to see you on our next conferences, and I wish you to have good holidays.
Thanks.